We've all wanted superpowers. I know this not only because I've thought about which superpower would be the coolest and most balanced for some reason, but there are just legitimately so many TV shows, movies, animes, comics, and especially Webtoon series that focus on characters with powers. Many that I read and thoroughly enjoy, however, there are many that I fail to talk about, at least independently, which is where our Webtoon of the week comes into play. Eleceed. Eleceed. Oh god. This is a Webtoon series that covers exactly what I was talking about. Superpowers. The world the series takes place in focuses on the society of the Awakened. The Awakened are basically just people with powers, like our main character Jiwoo. Now Jiwoo's power is super speed. He can move super far in the blink of an eye. However, that's kind of the problem. While living with super speed is super cool, Jiwoo at first doesn't really see it like that. He spent all of his life hiding his powers away, as his mother asked him to never show it to others. And the one time that he did show it to other kids, he was treated like an outcast, like a monster. So while he's had these powerful and really cool powers, Jiwoo was alone. No matter where he was, he's alone. Whether it be at school or at home, he had no one to talk to. No one to rely on, no one to be with. He had no friends. Human friends. As Jiwoo would always feed the local stray cats. Cats would be his only friends for a while. Until one very fat cat. Now, let's talk about Kaden. Now, the Awakened, like I said, are people with powers. The problem is that Jiwoo doesn't know anything about the Awakened world, so he's completely unaware of it. He feels like a freak in a world he doesn't belong in. However, Kaden is not only an Awakened, but considered one of the most powerful Awakened ones. His very name can often strike fear in the hearts of people. Kaden is incredibly strong. Very strong. However, the problem is that people are drawn to strength, both in a good way and in a more problematic way. Strength draws people to you to admire and respect you, but it also causes many people to challenge you. And that's what happens to Kaden a lot. As we see in the very first episode, him coming from a battle where they ganged up on him. Needing to hide without any trace, he decides to merge with a very fat cat, which is where these two Awakened finally meet up. Now, as a fan of both super-powered stories and cats, this series really likes to push both. It's a great read if you haven't read it. But today I wanted to talk about Jiwoo in the world of the Awakened. Now, Jiwoo is a relatively bright and cheerful kid, sometimes, as Jiwoo would often look and feel down around, well, most people, only being cheerful and talkative when it comes to cats. So when he thought Kaden in his cat form was just a normal cat, he was very talkative, as he normally was. However, when Kaden cat form speaks up, they strangely bond, as someone who loves cats and someone who is a cat. Anywho, when Kaden and Jiwoo finally start talking about the Awakened world, Jiwoo starts to tear up. When my mom found out about my powers, she told me never to use them. I used them once without meaning to when I was little. I will never forget how my friends looked at me afterward. They said I was a monster. Since then, I've been keeping my powers hidden. So when Jiwoo finally finds out that he's not diseased or a monster, he starts to tear up a little. He finally feels like he belongs in his world, especially with a talking cat right in front of him. He finally feels like he has a place in the world. Jiwoo's strength comes from his speed, but also from his heart, as he will always try to reach out to others and try to help them, like this other cat. As even in the face of great danger, Jiwoo tries his hardest to save him multiple times. And it is possible that he just loves cats to the point of going through grave danger to help them, but that sentence was very bizarre to write, much less say. But it's more just Jiwoo's heart. His ability to forgive others and become friends with just about anyone and everyone. Which brings us to 3 characters I want to talk about. 3 characters who are all affected by Jiwoo's actions. First, let's take a look at Wooin. Now, something interesting about our first 2 characters is that they aren't really introduced as good guys. Wooin was introduced as the assistant to the professor. The professor that was illegally experimenting on animals. Now, Wooin has dedicated his entire life to the professor. Which makes sense. He was an orphan, and the professor became his family. So he was very devoted to him, even when he would do illegal experiments or ask Wooin to steal animals. However, while he would always listen to his professor, he also tried his best to do the morally correct thing, or as good as he can get it. As when the professor did illegal experiments, he would always try his best to protect the animals, by lying and saying they died when he would actually deliver them to a vet to try to save their lives. And when he saw Jiwoo with one of the professor's experiments, he tried to discourage him from finding them, since if Jiwoo did find them, the professor would likely kill him. Wooin never had a great support system. He didn't have people who would boost him up, or at least didn't. As we see, even outside of the professor, he was a lonely and gloomy kid. That was until Jiwoo. Now, Jiwoo seemingly loves to get involved in other people's lives, but usually only when the people are in danger or are being mistreated. So when people are trying to fight Wooin for no reason, Jiwoo fights back. At this point, I wouldn't even call them friends. They said hi to each other. No, Jiwoo said hi to him once, and Wooin ignored him, and then Wooin beat him up once. But Jiwoo is the forgiving type. After his fight with Jisuk, someone I'll get to in a bit, Wooin gets kind of super mad after Jiwoo ends up in the hospital. Blaming the bullies, he ends up destroying them in a fight and challenging Jisuk. All because one of his friends got hurt. Wooin progresses from someone who was always alone, someone who never really cared about others, and someone who always tried to follow others' authority, to basically disobeying everyone, tries to fight everyone for one person who showed him kindness. Let's talk about Jisuk for a bit. Jisuk is a difficult person. Before I get into him, I quickly need to explain districts. Now, they can get a little complicated, but the general gist is that strong awakened ones divide territories into districts. That way they can divide awakened ones and kind of teach and govern over them. Make sure they follow the rules and such and whatever. The head of the district where the series mainly takes place in is Jiwoo, the older sister to Jisuk. Jisuk was taught ever since he was a child. He's not only gifted, but has been trained for years, becoming an incredibly powerful young awakened. His power means that not many people can stand against him, and it kinda goes to his head. As he becomes arrogant and a bit of a bully, he's willing to fight basically everyone for next to no reason. And what doesn't help is his friends. Or, well, friends. These 3 are just straight up bullies, as they constantly pick on others like our main characters. And they also use Jisuk for money and use his name to make people afraid of them. These 3 aren't really friends with Jisuk, and therefore aren't super good at boosting each other up. Now, Jisuk isn't the worst person. He's had a lot of pressure upon himself, but he still had a feisty attitude and bad temper. However, he still has some semblance of honor, as he doesn't want to fight Jiwoo when he's injured, and when he does beat up Jiwoo pretty badly, Jisuk still learns enough from him. Like learning what it means to be a good friend, spending time with people who are actually good people, sleeping over people's houses, respecting other people's decisions. Yeah, sure, he still has a terrible temper, but it starts to be directed into people who actually deserve it, who have actually done wrong deeds. Then this brings us to our last character, Kaden Break, or the fattest cat ever. As I mentioned before, Kaden was and still is considered the strongest awakening, period. He was so strong that his mere presence was enough to terrify others. Because of his strength, there were many people that wanted to be associated with him. They wanted him to join their district or their group. They wanted to use Kaden's strength and authority to do whatever they wanted. Because most people just wanted to use Kaden, he mainly stayed to himself, never really joining anyone or becoming close with anyone. That was until Jiwoo. Jiwoo kind of rescues him from an alley, giving him a place to stay and food. And even when Jiwoo finds out he's an absolute powerhouse, he still treats him the same. He never really tries to use Kaden for anything, wanting him to stick around because he genuinely enjoys his presence and respects Kaden enough as a teacher and mentor. Kaden changes as well, becoming someone who worries about Jiwoo, takes an apprentice under his wing when he's never done it before, even sharing some of his secrets with him. Jiwoo is a strong and talented awakening. And what I love about the series is it shows his strength grow over it. Jiwoo doesn't win every fight as he's still learning and growing. And because of that, it also shows his struggle, but it also shows him overcoming. But another strength he has is just his overwhelming positivity, as Jiwoo can become friends with just about anyone and everyone, as there isn't a person who he doesn't try to connect with. People who've hurt him are forgiven. People who were mean to him, the past is the past. Super powerful and top-ranked awakened ones, their hearts are warmed from his genuine kindness and positivity. I like how Jiwoo's positivity isn't treated as a weakness. They don't present it as something he should be ashamed of, as his positivity turns people into better people. Wooin becomes more outgoing and a protective person. Jisuk into someone who can focus his anger onto people who deserve it. And Kaden becomes a more open person. Jiwoo's strength is his speed, yes, but it's also his unending positivity and optimism. And I just really love that about this series. But that's all for today. So like always, thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you next week. Take care.